But one thing I'd like you to really talk about, because I think, you know, this would be the equivalent of having a great technology. I don't mean to make this mundane, or so excuse that reference. But going into your restaurant and spending an evening there is an experience. And it's not just because of the food.
No, absolutely not.
It really isn't. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, you know, we would talk about it having some type of management style or philosophy or something, but every time we go, we have a great time there. Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with management, really. You know, we've got a lot of different chefs, and most of them are Mexican. And someone said to me, and I've heard this a few times, "Oh wow, you have these Mexican guys here because man, they're cheap and you know, and they work hard." Hey, they're not cheap at Mia's. You know, we don't do that. And that's everything that I'm against. And listen, I can tell you, if you want me to point out a lazy Mexican, I can find you plenty of those too. You know what I mean? The reason why they're all Mexican is because when I hired Pablo, you know, almost 8 years ago, and Pablo did such a spectacular job. And I gotta kind of reel back and tell you, Pablo came to me as a very young man. He didn't speak any English, and he speaks English fluently at this point. And he came in with his cousins who do. And we were packed, and for some reason I'd fired somebody, so we were short-handed. And we really needed a hand. And so I said to his cousins, I was like, yeah, I'll hire Pablo, but can you tell him he's gonna work right now? And then they told him, and he looked shocked. And I was like, well, also tell him that, you know, if he works hard and it works out for him, this may change his life. And a couple years ago, I was talking to Pablo, and I was like, do you remember when I said that? And he's like, oh, of course I do, you know. And Pablo is highly respected in his family. And he's really the man of the house because he's really made it, you know. And he's only getting started because Mia's is growing and getting better. But I went back and I said to Pablo, I was like, you're doing spectacularly well, and I'm grateful. So if you want to give someone else an opportunity before I look for somebody else. And he was like, well, yeah. And then we got the next chef, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. And everyone on the floor is the same way. When people leave, they give an opportunity to someone else. So everyone believes in the philosophy of what Mia's is. So, you know, I think there's a lot of mouth service when people are like, oh yeah, we're a family of restaurants or businesses. But I really think that we are, you know. There's a tremendous love that exists in Mia's where people really, really care about the details of what they're doing. And you can't make anybody care. You know, it's either there or they don't. You know, you can't train people to care. You can't do rallies and make people care. We all know this. But I'm not at the restaurant too much anymore because I'm so busy. And I love being there. But I don't worry too much because I know how much every single one of those people care about the restaurant. It has nothing to do with the money that they're making. Because if they want to make money, a lot of these, you know, my best friend is like my brother's got a U Chicago degree. We've got a few Yale degrees in there. We've got writers and musicians, artists, people doing lots of different stuff there. And they could be doing anything but and everything but Mia's.
You have the best educated waiters I'd ever met in my entire life. There wasn't one the last time I was there that didn't have a PhD in something. I was really shocked. But, but when someone walks in the restaurant, what do you want them to feel or experience? You must have something in the back of your mind there, right?
Yeah, I want, first of all, I don't want them to ever feel like they're walking into a hoity-toity kind of place. I want them to feel like they can kick their shoes off. I want them to feel that it's very egalitarian here. So no one at Mia's talks to a waiter like a waiter, you know? A waiter doesn't talk to a cook like a cook, you know? There's tremendous respect that runs through the place. And then there's like a little wild streak that runs through it as well, which makes it really, really fun, you know? We've had some of the best wrestling matches right on the floor at Mia's, you know, after drinking lots of beer, you know, and stuff like that. But it's within the framework of a approach that everyone there has of respecting other people, you know, and for the individuals that they are.
When you took over the restaurant from your mother,
yeah.
What was that transition like? Like, you didn't immediately have this vision, did you?
Yeah. Yeah, it was very, the transition from my mother to me was very hard. But I do have to backpedal and say that, that she and I work together. We work pretty fantastically together now, and when people are like, oh, when you've taken it over, I don't feel that I've taken it over, you know. It's her baby and she started it, and we work together. But it was incredibly hard because we come from different generations, and she really believed in making and keeping me as traditional, and I wanted to do something that was completely different. But now, I think we agree with each other, you know, that we made the right choices.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Which I think speaks to a lot of what was asked earlier, which is management style ideas of like sort of like other corporations coming in.
Can you talk a little bit, because I think it would illustrate a lot of these things, like how do you get the sumac?
Okay.
You know, things like that. How do you get these crabs?
Yeah. Like I said, like I love nature, and part of it is that I spent a lot of time outdoors as a kid, and an important part of what I do is go hiking, and I often go hiking with like my buddy Mike, and we often don't go out specifically to find, you know, the wild grape leaves or the sumac to harvest it. We're out there anyway, and then we find it, and we're like, wow, this is fantastic, and let's make a sake out of this. We've made, you know, wild dandelion sake, which took us days and days to make, and we were only able to pull out like 24 small bottles, you know. So it makes no economic sense, but I learned a lot from the experience. So I think that reflects more my philosophy that everything that you do doesn't necessarily have to make money, and a lot of it has. I mean, you have to do some things that make money, of course, to be able to fund your free time. But my free time is what often gives me new ideas to do other things.